My fiancé said, I need to live my life and see other men. Sure, I'd wait for her, but when she came back pregnant begging for one more chance, I was done. I never thought the woman I was ready to spend my life with would show up on my doorstep, heavily pregnant with another man's child, 10 months after she walked away to find herself. The sheer audacity, the shock of it, nearly stopped my heart. It was a quiet Saturday morning. The coffee was brewing, the smell filling my kitchen, and I was just starting to scramble eggs. Chloe was still asleep in the bedroom, and for the first time in ages, everything felt peaceful. But in that one unexpected knock, my past exploded back into my perfectly rebuilt present. Let me take you back to where it all truly started. 5 years with Sarah felt like winning the lottery every single morning. We met at a coffee shop downtown. She accidentally grabbed my cappuccino, I grabbed her latte, and instead of an awkward swap, she just laughed and asked, "Want to split both and call it a date?" I was Ethan, 25, working my way up at an engineering firm, and she was finishing her master's in marketing. We weren't rich, not living some Instagram fantasy, but we had routines that felt like coming home. Every Saturday, we'd hit the farmer's market. She'd buy way too many flowers, and I'd carry them, pretending to complain. Every Sunday, I'd make pancakes that were slightly burned on one side, and she'd eat them anyway, reading me random facts from her phone. I wasn't perfect. I worked long hours, sometimes forgot anniversaries until the day before, and left my socks on the bathroom floor more than I should have. But I never made her feel small. I never controlled where she went or who she saw. I never gave her reasons to doubt that I was all in. When I proposed on our 5-year anniversary, right there in the same coffee shop, I had this whole speech prepared. How she was my home, my best friend, my future. She said yes before I even finished, crying so hard the barista brought over napkins. For a moment, I genuinely believed I'd figured out life, like I'd unlocked some secret level where everything just works. We started planning small things, a spring wedding, maybe outdoors, nothing fancy, just our people and good food. Her mom was already sending me pictures of flower arrangements. Her dad joked about me joining his fantasy football league. Her sister kept texting, asking if I needed help. Everything felt solid, like we were building something real that would last forever. But about 2 months after the engagement, little things started shifting in ways I couldn't quite name at first. Sarah said she needed more alone time, which I understood. Everyone needs space. So, I backed off. Gave her weekends to herself. She'd go out with friends more, stay out later, come home tired and distant. When I'd ask if everything was okay, she'd smile and say, "Just stressed with work." I wanted to believe her. Trusting someone means not interrogating them every time they seem off. I thought giving her breathing room was what a good partner does. One night, I suggested a weekend trip, just us, maybe drive up the coast and disconnect. She looked at me like I'd asked her to climb Everest. "I don't know if I can commit to that right now," she said. I laughed it off, figured she was overwhelmed. But that phrase stuck with me like a splinter I couldn't dig out. Can't commit to a weekend trip, but we're planning a wedding? The distance grew wider every day. She stopped doing our Saturday routine. Stopped caring about the pancakes. Stopped laughing at my dumb jokes. Stopped reaching for my hand. I asked her multiple times if something was wrong, if I'd done something. Every time she'd deflect, "I'm just going through something." I didn't push. I thought pushing would make it worse. I thought love meant giving space when someone asked for it. I thought being patient was the same as being supportive. Then came the night that cracked everything wide open. I came home from work around 7 and found her on the couch, the engagement ring on the coffee table in front of her. Not on her finger, just sitting there like some artifact from a life we used to have. My stomach dropped before she even opened her mouth. I knew whatever was coming would change everything, but I wasn't prepared for how completely it would shatter the future I thought we were building. She looked up, red-eyed, and said, "I need to talk to you." I sat down, feeling like I was watching my life happen to someone else, observing this tragedy from a distance. She told me she loved me, that I was amazing, that I'd done nothing wrong. All the words people say when they're about to destroy you but want to feel better about it. Like if they say enough nice things first, the knife won't hurt as much going in. Then she said the line that would echo in my head for months, I need to live, Ethan. I need to find myself. I got into this relationship so young, and I never figured out who I am without you. I stared at her, trying to process what living and finding herself meant. Had she been dead this whole time? Had I been holding her captive without knowing? Had our entire relationship been some prison? I asked if there was someone else. She swore there wasn't. Said it had nothing to do with anyone else, just her needing to experience life before settling down. The word settling hit me like a punch to the gut. Like our 5 years together were just some rehearsal for her real life that would start once she left me behind. Like I was the practice round before she found what she actually wanted. I made the biggest mistake of my life in that moment. Fueled by panic, desperation, and the belief that real love means sacrifice, I told her I understood. That if she needed time, I'd give it to her. That I'd wait, because that's what you do when you love someone. That our connection was too rare to just throw away over temporary confusion. She cried and hugged me. Maybe in a year or so, when I figure things out, we can try again. I held onto those words like a lifeline, like they meant something real and binding, like maybe was the same as definitely. She moved out that weekend. Took her stuff in boxes I helped her pack because I'm apparently a masochist who thought being helpful would somehow make her realize she was making a mistake. She left me in our apartment that suddenly felt 3 times too big and completely empty. I kept the ring in the drawer of my nightstand. Couldn't bring myself to return it or throw it away. It just sat there, reminding me every night that I was waiting for someone who chose to leave. The first few weeks, I genuinely believed she'd realize her mistake. That whatever she was searching for didn't exist out there. That she'd come back, and we'd laugh about this rough patch someday at our wedding. I told myself she just said things she didn't mean. That the pressure of marriage scared her. That she'd snap out of it once she had time to think clearly without me hovering. I didn't date, didn't even look at other women, didn't download apps or go to bars. I just existed in this weird limbo of not quite single, but definitely not together, holding on to a hope that felt more like self-destruction with every passing day. But I was too stubborn, or too stupid, to let go. The first month after Sarah left, I barely functioned. I'd come home from work to that empty apartment and just sit on the couch, staring at nothing. Sometimes I'd order food and forget to eat it. Sometimes I'd start a movie and realize 2 hours later I hadn't absorbed a single line. My brother, Noah, called me every few days to check in, asking if I wanted to grab a beer. I'd make excuses about being busy with work when really I was just sitting in the dark, convincing myself this was temporary. I kept telling myself she needed this time to get whatever was in her system out. That she'd wake up one day and realize what we had was rare and irreplaceable. People don't just throw away 5 years over some vague need to find themselves without eventually regretting it. I didn't delete her number, didn't unfollow her on social media, didn't box up the few things she'd left behind, like her favorite coffee mug and that sweater she always stole. I existed in this pathetic state of pause, like my real life couldn't start until she decided to come back and unpause it for me. Work became my only distraction. I volunteered for extra projects, stayed late, came in on weekends, anything to avoid that apartment and the weight of waiting that lived in every corner, in every space where she used to be. About 6 weeks after the breakup, my coworker mentioned seeing Sarah at some downtown bar. Said she seemed happy, dancing with friends, living it up like she didn't have a care in the world. I nodded like it didn't bother me, but spent the rest of the day feeling physically sick because Thursday was our night. We used to cook dinner together, watch whatever show we were binging. And now she was out at bars like those 5 years, and our sacred routines meant absolutely nothing. I told myself it was healthy, part of finding herself. That I shouldn't be jealous of her having fun when I literally told her to take the time she needed. But the image of her dancing and laughing while I sat alone eating takeout in the dark felt like a knife I couldn't pull out of my chest. Then Noah sent me a screenshot. Didn't even say anything, just forwarded it with a thought you should know message. It was Sarah's Instagram story from some beach trip. Her in a bikini with her arms around some guy I'd never seen before. Both of them looking way too comfortable for it to be casual, like they'd known each other more than 5 minutes. My hands shook holding my phone, staring at that picture, realizing that finding herself apparently meant finding herself wrapped around random men. Within 2 months of leaving me. Within 2 months of telling me she loved me and needed space. I wanted to text her, to call her, to ask what the hell she was doing and whether our 5 years together meant so little that she could replace me this fast. But what would I even say that wouldn't make me sound pathetic? We weren't together anymore. She didn't owe me explanations. She'd made it crystal clear she needed to live her life. And I'd stupidly told her I'd wait like some loyal dog sitting by the door. So, I did nothing. Just sat there feeling like the biggest fool alive, holding on to promises from someone who was clearly not holding on to anything except whatever random guy was convenient that week. More reports came in over the next few weeks, always from well-meaning friends who thought I should know. Sarah, different clubs, different bars, different parties, always with different guys, living this wild social life like she'd been released from prison after serving a 5-year sentence with me as her warden. Each piece of information felt like another nail in the coffin of whatever hope I'd been clutching. But I still couldn't bring myself to completely let go. Some pathetic part of me kept thinking maybe this was just a phase. Maybe she needed to get it out of her system before realizing I was what she actually wanted all along. I stopped going out with friends because I was tired of the pity in their eyes. Tired of them carefully not mentioning Sarah while obviously thinking about her. Tired of being the sad guy everyone felt sorry for at every gathering. The cautionary tale about waiting for someone who's never coming back. Around month 4, something shifted in me. Not dramatically, not like some movie moment where I woke up enlightened with perfect clarity. Just gradually, I started getting angry instead of sad. Angry that I'd put my life on hold for someone who clearly wasn't thinking about me at all. Angry that I'd made myself smaller to give her space she was using to mess around with half the city. Angry that I'd convinced myself waiting was noble and romantic when really it was just pathetic and self-destructive. I started going to the gym at 5 in the morning, not because I wanted to look better for her or anyone else. Just because I needed to do something with the rage that had replaced the sadness. I needed to feel strong when everything else made me feel weak, powerless, and used. I threw myself into a work project that had been sitting on the back burner for months. Stayed at the office until midnight, redesigning systems and solving problems. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I was building something instead of just surviving day to day. Noah convinced me to try therapy. Said talking to someone might help me process everything. I resisted at first because I'm not really a feelings guy, and the idea of paying someone to listen to me complain felt ridiculous. But eventually I went, and it actually helped to say out loud how betrayed I felt, how stupid I felt, how angry I was at myself for wasting months on someone who'd moved on the second she walked out the door. I stopped checking her social media entirely. Blocked her stories so I wouldn't accidentally see them during weak moments at 2 in the morning. Deleted the photos from my phone because looking at them felt like picking at a wound that would never heal if I kept touching it and reopening it every single day. I didn't do it because I was over her. I did it because I was tired of hurting myself. Tired of being my own worst enemy. Tired of choosing to suffer when I could choose literally anything else with my time and energy. My coworkers started commenting that I seemed different, more focused, more present in meetings. One even joked that I'd gotten my edge back, like I was some sword that had been dulled and was finally sharp again. I realized I had been sleepwalking through my own life, waiting for someone else to give me permission to live it. Waiting for Sarah to decide I was worth coming back to when I should have been deciding whether she was worth another second of my time. 6 months after Sarah left, Noah dragged me to his friend's birthday party. I didn't want to go, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. Said I couldn't hide forever and eventually I'd have to rejoin the human race. And he was absolutely right. That's where I met Chloe. She was a friend of the birthday guy's girlfriend, worked in graphic design, had this calm, steady energy that felt like the opposite of everything I'd been through, like still water after a hurricane. We talked about normal things, work, hobbies, favorite restaurants, what shows we were watching. No drama, no intensity, no deep conversations about finding ourselves, just easy conversation that didn't feel like work or walking through a minefield. She asked for my number at the end of the night, and I hesitated. Not because I didn't like her, but because some part of me still felt like I was betraying Sarah by even considering moving forward, which was insane considering Sarah had clearly moved forward the second she walked out my door and never looked back. Chloe texted me a few days later, asking if I wanted to grab coffee. And I said yes before I could overthink it, before I could talk myself back into waiting for someone who was never coming back the same way. Before I could convince myself I owed Sarah loyalty when she'd shown me none. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekend hikes, and slowly, I started feeling like a person again instead of just a ghost haunting his own life, waiting for permission to exist. Chloe never pushed, never demanded to know my whole story on the first date. Never made me feel bad for not being completely over my ex. She just existed beside me, letting me heal at my own pace without judgment or pressure. I didn't fall in love immediately. Didn't have some magical moment where everything clicked. I just gradually realized I was laughing again, making plans again, looking forward to things again. All without Sarah anywhere in the picture, or even in my thoughts. 3 months into seeing Chloe, I finally took the engagement ring to a jeweler and sold it. Used the money to book a trip for Chloe and me to the mountains. Driving home that day, I felt lighter than I had in over a year, like I'd been carrying a backpack full of rocks and finally set it down. I wasn't waiting anymore. Wasn't holding my breath for someone to choose me. Wasn't putting my life on pause for a woman who'd shown me exactly how much I meant to her by immediately replacing me with a rotation of strangers she'd probably already forgotten. I was done being the backup plan. Done being the safety net. Done mistaking self-abandonment for love. Done pretending that loyalty to someone who showed me none was somehow noble instead of just sad. I was making breakfast that Saturday morning, scrambling eggs while coffee brewed, when I heard the knock at the door. Chloe was still asleep, and I figured it was a delivery or my neighbor. So, I opened the door without checking the peephole. There stood Sarah, looking like she'd aged 5 years in the 10 months since I'd last seen her. She was visibly pregnant, maybe 6 or 7 months along, wearing sweatpants and an oversized jacket that couldn't hide the belly. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her eyes had this desperate, pleading look that I recognized from a lifetime ago when she used to need my reassurance. My brain needed a full 10 seconds to process what I was seeing. To connect the woman in my doorway with the woman who'd left me to find herself. To register that the finding herself had apparently resulted in a whole other human being growing inside her, concrete proof of exactly how she'd spent the months I'd wasted waiting. She said my name softly, like testing whether I'd slam the door in her face. I just stood there frozen, trying to figure out what possible reason she could have for showing up here after 10 months of radio silence. She asked if we could talk, and I stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind me. Chloe didn't need to wake up to this chaos. Didn't need to be dragged into the drama of my past showing up pregnant and desperate. Sarah's face looked a little like she'd expected to be invited in, like old times, like nothing had changed, like she still had some claim to my space in my life. We stood there in the hallway, and she started talking fast, nervous energy pouring out of her. Saying she'd made a huge mistake, that the last 10 months had been the worst of her life. That she'd been lost and confused and didn't know what she was doing when she left. I listened without interrupting, watching her hands move as she talked, noticing she was trying not to cry, noticing the belly that made it impossible to ignore what she'd been doing while I was supposedly waiting like some prize she'd put on layaway. She told me she thought about me every day. That none of the guys she'd been with meant anything. That they were just distractions from the real problem, which was that she'd thrown away the best thing in her life for absolutely nothing. The audacity of standing there pregnant with another man's child while telling me I was the best thing in her life would have been funny if it wasn't so insulting. If it didn't make me feel like she thought I was the stupidest person alive. Then came the part that made my blood run cold. She said she remembered what I'd told her that night she left, that I'd wait for her, that we could try again when she figured things out. She actually believed I'd been sitting around for 10 months, waiting for her to finish sleeping with half the city and come back to me like nothing happened. Like I was some wind-up toy she could put on a shelf and pull down whenever she got bored with her other options, or when those options stopped being fun. She reached for my hand, and I pulled back instinctively. The touch felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate, like her fingers were contaminated with all the choices she'd made that had nothing to do with me. She looked hurt, like she had any right to be hurt after everything she'd put me through, after leaving me in pieces while she lived her best life. She started crying then, real tears streaming down her face, telling me she loved me, that she'd always loved me, that she knew she messed up, but people make mistakes, and isn't love about forgiveness and second chances? I felt nothing watching her cry. No urge to comfort her, no instinct to fix her pain like I would have a year ago. Just this cold, analytical observation that the woman I'd have died for was now a stranger using our history as a weapon against my peace. I finally spoke, and my voice came out flat and tired, like I was reading from a script I'd rehearsed 1,000 times in my head. I told her I wasn't the same person who said he'd wait. That the man who loved her died somewhere between month 2 and month 3 of watching her live her best life while I grieved our relationship alone in that empty apartment. She tried to interrupt, but I kept going. Told her she didn't leave to find herself. She left because she wanted to sleep around without guilt, and that's fine. People are allowed to make choices, but she doesn't get to make those choices and then come back expecting me to clean up the mess when it stops being fun. Her face crumpled, and she said, "But you promised." Like a promise made under false pretenses means anything. Like I'd somehow violated our agreement by choosing to rebuild my life instead of waiting for her to destroy it again when she got bored or desperate. I asked about the father, about the baby, about what her actual plan was here, showing up at my door 10 months later. And she admitted the father wanted nothing to do with it, that she was scared and alone and needed someone she could trust to help her through this. The truth came out so casually, like she didn't even realize how insulting it was. She didn't want me because she loved me. She wanted me because I was safe. Because I was the reliable backup plan who'd take care of her when her fun choices had consequences she couldn't handle alone. I heard my apartment door open behind me, and Chloe appeared in one of my old shirts. Her hair messy from sleep, looking concerned but calm. She asked if everything was okay, and I saw Sarah's face shift from desperate to angry in half a second. Saw her look Chloe up and down like she was trying to figure out how this fit into her narrative where I'd been pining away for her return. I introduced them calmly, keeping my voice level. "Sarah, this is Chloe, my girlfriend. Chloe, this is Sarah, my ex-fiancée." And Sarah actually laughed this bitter, angry laugh like I'd betrayed her by moving on, like I'd violated some unspoken contract by not staying miserable. She said, "You moved on that fast?" And I almost laughed at the hypocrisy, at her standing there pregnant asking me about moving on fast, but I was too tired for the fight, too done with her selective memory. Chloe squeezed my hand and said she'd give us privacy, kissed my cheek, and went back inside, handling the situation with more grace than it deserved, showing me in that one moment exactly why I'd chosen to build something with her. Sarah watched her go and then turned to me, tears streaming down her face, begging me to reconsider. Saying we could make it work, that she'd be a good partner this time, that the baby needed a father, and I'd always wanted kids so this could work out for both of us. The manipulation was so transparent it was almost offensive. Trying to use my desire for family against me. Trying to guilt me into raising another man's child because she'd burned every other bridge in her life with her choices. I looked at her standing there. This woman I'd once planned my entire future around, and felt absolutely nothing except relief that I'd stopped waiting. Relief that I'd chosen myself. Relief that Chloe was inside my apartment instead of Sarah. Relief that I'd learned what real partnership looks like. I told her no, simply and clearly. Told her I hoped she figured things out, but I wasn't her solution. Wasn't her second choice. Wasn't going to sacrifice the life I'd built from the ashes of what she destroyed. She stood there sobbing, asking how I could be so cold, how I could turn my back on someone I loved. And I realized she still didn't get it. Still thought love meant accepting whatever crumbs someone decided to throw your way when their other options dried up. I told her I did love her, past tense. Loved the version of her that existed before she walked away. But that woman was gone, and I wasn't interested in whatever was standing in front of me now, using pregnancy as leverage. I went back inside my apartment, closed the door softly, and locked it while she was still standing in the hallway crying. Chloe was sitting on the couch, looking worried, and I sat down next to her, pulled her close, and felt the weight of the last year finally lift off my shoulders completely. Through the door, I could hear Sarah walking away, her footsteps fading down the hallway. And I didn't feel guilty, didn't feel cruel, didn't feel anything except grateful that I'd learned the difference between love and self-destruction before it was too late to save myself. Chloe asked if I was okay, and I realized I actually was. Maybe for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I was genuinely okay. Not just surviving, but actually living. Love doesn't always wait. Sometimes it moves on when respect is gone. Sometimes it finds you when you stop looking for it in people who prove they don't deserve it. And sometimes closing the door on your past is the only way to fully open yourself to your future, to the life you actually deserve instead of the one someone else decided you should settle for. What would you have done if you were in my shoes that morning?